Hey, Garth.
Hey, Jason. Good to see you.
Hey, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Got a question for you this morning.
Okay.
When was the last time you made a big decision, and what was that decision?
When was the last time I made a decision? What was that decision? I don't know. Sometimes the smallest decisions can result in big decisions. Okay, I'll share one with you. So in my line of work, I do a lot of traveling and have an opportunity to travel to South Africa for a site visit and course development. And I'm going to do that over March break. And I made the decision to bring my son with me.
Nice.
And it's going to be so great. It's going to be amazing. I made this decision for him, not with him. And I find myself wrestling with it.
Right.
Because sure, he said, yeah, I want to go, but he's 14. This is 18 hours on a plane. This is another country, and he's with his dad, and my wife's staying at home because we've got another son who's going to be at home. This is the first time he and I are going to be like this in this intensive moment together. And for me, I was like, this is so exciting. This is so great. I have made a decision where he's like, okay. That's a big decision I'm wrestling with right now. We bought the tickets. We can't return them. So he's coming.
I wonder, aside from the financial commitment, what was the value you used to help yourself make that decision?
Yeah. I value experience. I value what travel has done for me, and I want to gift that to my son.
You got it.
I want him to seek different perspectives. I want him to be able to understand, specifically to South Africa. I want him to understand the Truth and Reconciliation work that's gone on there, the relationship with Indigenous peoples in South Africa, and bring that back and be like, I recognize this here. So that is a strong value. Seeking perspectives and living the perspectives of others is really what drove me.
Well, thanks, Garth. I think it's a great lead into today's podcast because we're talking about ethical leadership, and we have just a killer guest on the show. Do you want to tease it really quickly for our listeners?
Vanessa Wade is doing her doctoral in leadership, and she's taking an ethical viewpoint on it. We hear about utilitarianism, that's Jonathan Bentham. We hear about Immanuel Kant. We hear about hate and the anxious generation. We hear about system 1, system 2 thinking. We talk about values and morals and ethical codes and how those are tested in the everyday life. Like it's tested in the example I just gave you, Jason, right? And she brings a lot to bear in this discussion, and it is exceptional. The couple of things she drops are like these big truth bombs, which are like, trust leads to truth and truth leads to trust. This concept of moral courage, and that we are constantly testing ourselves in every decision we make. I used to work with her. It's great to reconnect with her. It's going to be a lot of fun.
In fact, Garth, this podcast is so good we didn't want it to end. We have 2 additional endings to this one. Yeah. So hang in there after the closing because you're going to hear some incredible conversations to follow up. We hope that you love this show because we love the conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC, Richmond's field to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso away. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Lassoing Leadership, Season 2. I'm your host, Garth Nichols.
And I am also your host, Jason Rogers. And today we are joined by an incredible guest to help us understand further what it means to lead ethically. This is a culmination of so many of the topics we've talked about, Garth, throughout this season. And I think it's just going to be a great, well, it's not the wrap up, but it does bring a lot of those topics together.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're joined by a dear friend of an old colleague of mine, Vanessa Wade. We worked together at Haverhill College many moons ago, but I'm excited to be reconnected with Vanessa. And actually, Jason, I don't know if you know this, but when we started season 2 and we did a tease of all of the topics that we're looking at, Vanessa reached out and said, I would love to talk about ethical leadership. And so now, Vanessa, here we are. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And it's great to be here. And I've been excited about this podcast and being part of it because I certainly have been tuned in for the past couple seasons. So it is great to be here. So my name is Vanessa Wade. I am the assistant head of school life at King's Edge Hill School, which is located in the beautiful Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. For those who haven't had the chance to take a trip from Halifax up to the Annapolis Valley, it is incredible. It is beautiful. And I'm so grateful that I live here. I'm not originally from Nova Scotia, as obviously I worked at Havergal with Garth. I am as I sometimes like to refer, the Ontarian who's come from away, but I am here, and certainly all my family is still in Ontario. And so visits back home are wonderful, and connections back to friends like Garth and Jason to get to meet you has been great. And yeah, I mean, why I picked ethical leadership as the topic that I was invested in into speaking about today. I've been thinking about the ethical leadership now for probably the past 20 years. Starting from, way back when I was working at St. Clement's School and doing this kind of work. So yeah, excited about it.
Awesome. Well, go ahead, Jason.
Vanessa, can you tell our listeners just a little bit more about what you do day to day as assistant head of student life out there? I think it might be new to some of our listeners, particularly if they're not in schools.
Yeah, so King's Edge Hill is a boarding school. It's half day, half boarding. And so I oversee everything that's not academic. So that would be boarding life, sports, arts. We have a cadet program here. What occurs in chapel, wellness, and certainly work in conjunction with our assistant head of school academics on the daily basis. But just because everything does feed through and it's not siloed. And then part of my job is I am the head of discipline. It's not a title per se, but it's certainly, I sometimes am referred to as the head disciplinarian at the school.
And no doubt you'll draw on some of that
for sure
in this conversation about ethical leadership.
You bet.
Vanessa, it's great to reconnect with you and have the next 15, 20 minutes with you. Though I know it won't be enough time. So let's jump in. And before we do, listeners, as you are listening, think of some questions, right? Send us some, lassoingleadership@gmail.com, LinkedIn, Spotify, whatever. But think about this, because as Jason said, this is like where it all comes together, manifests all these things about humility and vulnerability. And we spoke to Beth Pillsbury about that, trust and trustworthiness. And we spoke to some people about that as well. So can you start by telling us, Vanessa, what does ethical leadership mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think by textbook definition, ethical leadership is a leader who would lead by their morals and their values. And, we all have, well, I sometimes don't think we think enough about this, but what are our own values? But certainly you also have your values of your school. So whether or not you're leading by your decisions are being based on the values of the school or your own moral code, it is someone who the transparency is there. You can tell that this person is guided by some sort of ethical code of some sort. And the transparency piece, and I know you mentioned that is something you've already discussed, that is key to this, because in essence, an ethical leader is someone who's trustworthy, someone that you feel that you can really get behind because you know what to expect, because they're not wishy-washy. They're quite guided by what they do. Do I think that most people wish or hope that they are an ethical leader? Yes. And that's why it's this overarching probably theme within leadership. I mean, who would say, I think I'm an unethical leader? No one wants that. But the truth is that it's not so much necessarily what I think, it's what the people who I'm serving think. Am I an ethical leader? And so, yeah, I mean, I could go on for a long time about this, but I think that's where I think another overarching leadership style comes in here, and that's mindful leadership, and are you someone that takes some time to reflect on your own values? Are you someone who asks the question like, do people know what my values are? And how would they know that?
Now, Vanessa, you've hit on so many topics that I want to dig in on. So I'm just chomping at the bit. I want to start with a bit of a scenario question. We know we have a lot of experienced leaders who listen to this, but also a lot of aspiring leaders. And an aspiring leader may be listening and wondering, well, gosh, I haven't thought about my values. Where do I start? Like, that seems like a pretty big bite. So if I was a leader just getting into leadership and I was wondering about my own personal values, how'd you coach me to start thinking about them, start nailing them down?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I should probably give you, one of the places that I started doing this work with was through an organization called the Institute for Global Ethics. Now, it unfortunately has folded simply because the person who started it, Rushworth Kidder, and that's my guru in this realm. He wrote the book Moral Courage, and he actually has trademarked that term. A lot of people use that term, but it is his term, and the Institute for Global Ethics did that. And part of the work there was to actually take some time, that reflective time that you need to say, okay, what do I value? And if I were to have my school, or if I were to have my office, and there were 5 values that I had to have outside my door, what would be the absolute non-negotiables that when you walk into my space, that would be the 5 values that would be outside my door? And there's a really neat exercise that you can do actually called a shared values exercise with your team. I do this with the prefects when I work with them, is like, how do you co-create those values that then they come from the ground up? But for an individual, it's like taking the time to actually say, this is what I value. And I know I value it because when I make decisions, I'm basing it on those things.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Garth, I know I cut you off a second ago. Did you have something there?
This is really interesting. So in cohort 21, we have 2 different threads. One is our design thinking action thread, and the other is this leadership lab. And we have talked a lot about values and do these sort of values inventory. But Vanessa, one thing that we did was we asked everyone to choose someone who they interact with, a leader that they interact with fairly regularly. And we got them to think about 1 or 2 experiences that they have with them. And based on those 2 experiences, be a values investigator. What do you think, based on how they behaved, based on what they said, what do you think their 3 values were? And it's an really interesting, maybe this is a challenge for our listeners, Jason. It's a really interesting thing to say, choose a leader or ask someone, hey, listen, what values came up from me in that meeting that we were just in together? Because that values investigation piece really brings to light how we live our values. And I just love what you said there. The other thing that you said, which is really interesting, is values and morals. And those are 2 different things. And morals are a trickier place because there's a societal influence on morals. And so how do you ensure that your decisions, maybe as a disciplinarian, maybe as student life, are ethical and follow the, what did you say, the ethical code, right? Because when you are in an organization, you can have your own values. Students have values, and they're expressed through this moral code of like how they live together. So can you talk about how you ensure that your decisions are aligned with the school moral code or the ethical code?
Yeah. And I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about this actually, because in the work again of Rushworth Kidder, and I'm going to go back to him. The other book he wrote was When Good People Make Tough Choices. And that book is incredible, because really an ethical dilemma is when 2 of your values come in conflict with each other, right? So for example, loyalty and honesty, like when those 2 come in conflict with each other, or justice versus mercy, that's really tricky stuff. And, I can think of a couple of times this year where really I've had to make an ethical decision, and you have to dig deep on those ones and say, there's 3 different models that you can be thinking of. There's the utilitarian model, which is, the greatest good for the greatest amount of people, right? And I think I usually fall back on that one. At the end of the day, is like, who is going to be affected by this decision, and what is the greater good? And then there's the Kantian model, which was if this was going to be a rule forever, what would that, and you had to make this be the rule forever and going forward, would you make this decision? And then the last, like the caring principle is, do unto others as you would want done to you, or whatever that saying is, treat others as you would like to be treated. But at the end of the day, and I say this to you guys as leaders, like, how many times do you fall back on intuition, right? And your gut, right? And that is, I think when you look at the research of ethical decision-making, until the 1980s, we were all like, oh yeah, we're using, utilitarian, we're using Kantian thinking. But then all of a sudden, Jonathan Haidt, who's the guy who basically got cell phones out of people's hands, Jonathan Haidt wrote a book about the intuitionist model. And that was basically that we use our gut reaction, and then we afterwards say, okay, well, I'm gonna rationalize this with my values, right? So I find sometimes that's the principle that you go with. You're like, okay, this is what feels good right now. And then you're like, okay, I'm rationalizing that because that's the kind thing to do, or that's the right thing to do. And I can, but now there's this thinking, and I bought this book because I really needed and wanted to get more experience with this. There's this dual processing theory, which is system 1, system 2 thinking.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to get into the Daniel Kahneman's work of thinking's fast and slow. And that I find you got to practice that, right? Like, we can get into go mode as leaders and just go intuitionist model, and that's our go-to. But when we actually get into the mode of really starting to think, how do I slow this down and really start to think about our values and be reflective of what I actually value? It's okay to slow decisions down. It's okay to not be like, I got to put the gear on this because people need answers right now. I got parents calling me and they want me to know, what are you doing? And their teachers are all like, this person should be expelled. And you're like, but you can slow it down.
So in
right?
Kidder's book, chapter 1 of Moral Courage, he talks about St. Paul's lacrosse team, right? And he talks about how this school, which is so well known for lacrosse, doesn't have a lacrosse team for that year because it's an awful situation. But he says, we are doing the hard right. We are teaching students our lesson. We are establishing or reestablishing the ethical code of this school, and we're willing to sacrifice part of our identity for it because the ethical identity is what's more important. I love that. You just name dropped so many people. Thank you. That's an amazing answer. I love it.
Now, Vanessa, you had it felt like a bit of a throwaway statement in your first answer that I want to come back to. And you said organizational values and personal values should be aligned. And we've talked about congruence in the past when it comes to organizational and personal values. Can you unfold that a little bit more? Why is that so important? And how does that support your professional life or your leadership?
I mean, in an ultimate world, you're working in a school where where the organizational values match your own personal values. But we actually just did a revision of our values here at King's Edge Hill, and we changed around some words that, we thought were more pertinent nowadays, and added, kindness as a value. We used to have gentleness, which I love the word gentleness as a value, but kindness is very important right now. And we also added integrity. My goodness, do we need more integrity in this day and age? And so, ultimately, a lot of these words get conflated, right? Like they're synonymous to a lot of things, but if you are not aligned in where you work with the values, then I think that's a problem, right? And if you can't live out the school's values with integrity, really, then that's an issue. But again, I don't think there's any school that has some sort of value that you're like, oh, that is not on par. I can't do that, right? Respect, we all have. And in fact, that's what the Institute for Global Ethics would say, is that at the end of the day, when you do all these exercises and you drill down, what are the most important things, the same 5 values come up almost every single time, right? It doesn't matter what country you do this work in. It doesn't matter. Justice might look a little different in some countries. Justice looks different in how that word plays out. You might hear equity. You might hear, fairness, mercy, whatever that looks like. But it all comes down. It's the same words, right?
So words are critical. And you said we've moved a couple of words around. The words that you use are really important. How do you make sure that there's a shared understanding of what kindness looks, sounds, and feels like in your school or in your organization? Havergal has 4 values. They're amazing. One of them is integrity. And one of them is integrity, but the one I want to talk about is inquiry, which I usually talk about as curiosity, right? And you can abuse curiosity. You can ask so many questions that you slow processes down. How do you make sure that you're transparent with what these words mean?
Yeah, so we talk about them a lot. Like I would say almost every assembly, and we're trying to do it so that it doesn't become like ad nauseum for the kids, because then they're like, oh, here we go with kindness again. But every single meeting I have, every email I send out, there is some throwback to our values. We are absolutely driving values as how this school operates, so that there is no doubt. And you know what I love, and how you know this is working, is because I have parents come home and tell me that at the dinner table, the kids are talking about things like kindness. Like, that's what we want to have happen, is that they say, oh, I was talking to Miss Wade, and that person, what they did wasn't acting with integrity. Like, yes, perfect, good, right? So you have to, and then the common understanding of it, you've got to workshop that out. And we had to talk to our faculty about that. What does it mean? Like, what does dignity mean? That's a hard one. Like, that's one of our values too. Because, and how it means for different people is important, right? And so our head of school spent the first, he has time up on the assembly stage, but he spent time drilling down, what does dignity means for the entire community to understand that. So yeah, I love it. I love talking about values clearly.
So, Vanessa, when leaders are listening to this podcast and thinking about ethical leadership, they're probably, wondering about their own experiences when they may or may not have followed, like, what would have been a best ethical path in leadership. And I think you spent a lot of time thinking about this. So I'd love to hear from your experience a time when, like a situation when you really leaned on your ethical leadership principles to pull you through a tough situation.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of, a recent situation. I won't go into details about what it was about, but
tell us
a recent situation. Yeah.
Nobody's listening anyways, Vanessa. Just
my head of school's be like, where, and it involved my head of school as well, Joe Seagram, who is an ethical man, like truly. So it helps when you've got someone who also I would really deem as an ethical leader. And so we had a situation where we really felt like it was unethical what was occurring, but it was at the cost of something. Like it was at the cost of perhaps, just like, what happened at St. Paul's with the lacrosse team. Really it would mean that we are potentially at risk of the school being liable in some way, right? But at the end of the day, if this makes the front page of the newspaper, and that's another guiding way of thinking about decision making, what would you want it to say? At the end of the day, like, so we had to sit down and have a think, like, this doesn't sit well, in my gut, and it doesn't actually, when we think about our school values of kindness, integrity, dignity, and respect, if we pick that decision that would make the school, we're doing quote unquote the right thing, is it actually the right thing for those kids? And like, and is it the humanistic approach, right? I hope I hope that's not too vague, because I can't really go into the details, but you have to, I guess, I was tested, and my other test of whether or not I've made the right decision is, at night, can I put my head on my pillow and fall asleep?
Exactly.
Right? Like, at the end of the day, like, as hard as that decision might be, and as tricky as those days might be after you've made that decision, can I look myself in the mirror and say, yeah, you know what, Vanessa, you made the right call there, right?
That's a great litmus test for sure. I mean, being able to be with yourself in leadership, even though we have to make these difficult decisions and make, difficult calls all the time. I think coming back to your own morals and values and your ethics, I think, do sustain you. And I think, and like you said, if you have congruence with your organization and personal values, I think you have more purpose, right? And I think that purpose 100%. Does fuel some of you and wards off burnout, I think, in this very difficult profession that we have.
For sure.
What I loved about your answer there too was this notion of testing yourself, and then going back to what you said about system 1, system 2 thinking. In that moment, you have to think about who and how you will be in the future with the decision you're making right now.
Yeah.
Who and how you will be in the future with that action that you're taking.
Mhm.
Vanessa, listen, we have to wrap this up, but you've mentioned so many people. Can you think of other people in your life or resources? Our listeners are like, whoa, she name dropped Kant, Haidt, System 1, System 2, Rushworth Kidder. What do you recommend? Where do we start?
You know what? The other person I think I have to mention here is the work of, Irshad Manji. Like, I mean, she also is a big proponent for moral courage, and she has done excellent work in this area. And I think the work of ethical leadership does require moral courage. You need to be able to, and what she talks about is this idea of, when we have these difficult conversations we sometimes need to have. And I think, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her, but certainly, there's also some excellent podcasts out there. I mean, there is a podcast called like Ethical Leadership, that I tend to listen to just to get some ideas as well. But yeah, I mean, hardcore Rushworth Kidder. I would say he's also got a book for about kids as well. When
Like
good
a YA,
kids,
like a YA version?
I have used it. It's more for parents, I would say, but I think anytime that you can give case scenarios to kids about ethical dilemmas, the better. Throw them at them.
I totally
all
agree.
Day long, so that they just practice. Yeah.
And Vanessa, in this day and age, I think we need more ethical, moral leadership and exemplars to follow. So personally, and for all of our listeners and for all of our schools that you're impacting, thank you for the information you provided to us and to the world today. I think this is nothing but helpful. So I appreciate it. I know our listeners do as well.
All right,
well,
folks.
It's been great.
Yeah, thanks. That's a wrap. Vanessa, thank you so much. Listeners, thanks for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, all those great things. Vanessa, we've talked about this before we hit record. Can you do us the honor of taking us home?
You bet. Until next time, keep leading the Lasso way.
Nice. Thanks, everybody.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right.
Vanessa, that was an awesome episode, and you
So
spoke a little bit about boarding school. Tell us, how do your students take this up? How do your students take up making right decisions?
Yeah, and I think, again, and I said this, you have to practice ethical dilemmas with them, like give them examples. So, for example, this is a good one that we did with students, where you say, okay, you're being picked up from a party. Okay. You're being picked up from a party, and your best friend's dad comes to pick you up. Okay. And you smell booze on his breath. Do you get in the car or not? Right.
Damn.
Yikes.
So your loyalty is there because you're like, ooh, you know what? I can't, like, what am I supposed to say to my best friend? Like, what do I do there? But then the honesty is like, I don't feel comfortable getting in this car. So we work through these scenarios with them. And we actually, like, what we've done is actually provided them with the 3 models of thinking: greatest good for the greatest amount of people. If this was a universal rule for the rest of your life, what would you do? Or if this was happening to me, would I want this to be happening to me as well? And when you give them those scenarios, so usually we worksheet this out and provide them with those scenarios, have them write that down, what they would do, and then talk about it, right? It's, because again, with students, the loyalty versus honesty piece is the hardest, because for teens, loyalty is everything. It's everything.
I think it's similar to schools and the adults in the building too. Are you
True.
loyal to your colleagues? Are you loyal to the school? And when those things come into tension, like, where do you go? Ugh, Vanessa,
Yeah.
so good. So good.
So good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for coming back, Vanessa.
I
Appreciate
appreciate it.
jumping back onto the pod. Garth, well done.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right.
Hey, Vanessa, welcome back. After our conversation, I couldn't help myself. I've got a question I want you to think about. When our students see world leaders behaving badly, how do we help them understand that might not be ethical leadership?
Great point. And to be honest, I only got back thinking about ethical leadership about 2 years ago, because I don't know about you guys, but I think COVID was certainly played an impact on the behavior of kids. But no doubt in my mind, when you've got leaders who can get up on a stage and make fun of someone who is cognitively or intellectually disabled and do that in front of the entire world and not be called out on it. I mean, how do you then come forward and say, okay, kindness is our value and everyone should be kind, right? Like that becomes tricky. But at the same token, we're trying not to keep up the polarization and make it all that like this leader's bad and this leader's good. And, that's a tricky place to land as well. I think more than ever, we need to be doing this work. Like kids with integrity is like the code name I'm going by right now. And we need to have kids with integrity because they are not being modeled it. And it starts with, and this is the work I'm doing my doctorate right now. And this is the work that I'm really focusing in on, is this idea of like, first of all, how do we role model this with the adults in the building? Because if they're not getting modeled it in other ways, then we need to be doing it. And so how do they see kindness, right? How do they see integrity? And I think we can all take a look that sometimes we might not work. And now I'm going to go to restorative justice or restorative practice.
Yeah.
Okay. Because now this is a big piece, restorative practice, working with the students as opposed to working to them or for them, right? So we've really been working with our faculty on this idea that you need to work with the students so that it is kind. It's not like, pull up your socks, give me your phone, do this. That's not kind, right? But kindness takes time, right? It does take time, but it's worth it. It's worth it because that is how you build trusting relationships with kids. And you can't get to truth without trust. There's another, I'm going to throw that out there too in the ethos.
Yeah. I love it because where you went with restorative practices, I keep thinking about when we are role modeling leadership, I keep thinking about this, just layering on Indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing. Right. And this concept of you might be an excellent leader or the most successful leader or the leader that's on the stage a lot now. But how are you working for 7 generations from now? How is your behavior influencing the world that you want to create? And you say this in the main session here, but the ethical code. How are you living out an ethical code so that other people can follow it in a way that provides flourishing, in a way that provides for reconciliation? Yeah, that's so powerful, Vanessa. Thank you.
Kindness takes time. That's a mic drop. Well done, Vanessa. Thank you.
What'd you say? Truth before what? Truth before?
Trust.
No,
trust.
Trust leads to truth.
Trust leads to truth. Writing that down.
And truth leads to trust.
Bam.
Step up to the mic. It's time to play. Lassoing leadership every day, from the pitch to the boardroom, lessons call to mind. Keep leading the lasso way. You'll find we've got heart, we've got soul, and humor too. Exploring how TED shows what leaders should do. With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC, Richmond's Field to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from TED, we'll learn and grow.